I'm an illustrator, I'm an artist, I'm a cartoonist, and I'm a designer. So essentially I draw stuff. I draw quite a lot of stuff. And drawing stuff has allowed me to work with thousands of people over the last 20 years or so. It's also allowed me to work on a huge range of different projects, from children's book illustration to comic book art to concept design, character development. I've painted huge walls, massive murals, and I've worked in tattoo art as well. Drawing for me has always been more than just a job, more than just a hobby. It's something that I feel like I need to do. So drawing has always worked as a form of therapy for me as well. So if there's something that's bothering me, the first thing I want to do is I tend to want to pick up a pencil and a piece of paper and draw. It might be something personal, it might be something political, whatever it is I'm thinking about, excuse me. Drawing allows me to get whatever I have in my head down on paper. Equally, if there's something that I'm happy about, then the first thing I tend to want to do is to draw. So shortly after my kids were born, one of the first things I did was pick up a sketchbook and start drawing them. Drawing has also allowed me to work with thousands and thousands of children. So over the last 7 or 8 years, I've visited roughly 250 schools, libraries, various events and festivals. I worked with around about 150,000 children, teaching them how to draw everything from cartoon characters to superheroes, showing them how to draw faces, how to draw hands, how to draw poses, how to use light and shape, pretty much everything else you can think of in between. There is one thing that is kind of consistent through absolutely everybody I've worked with. And these kids that I've worked with vary massively in ages and abilities. So I worked with kids from 4 years right the way up to 16, 17 and 18 years old, going into sixth form, into college and into university. I worked with kids who can naturally just pick up a pencil and draw anything, seemingly without trying. I worked with kids who find it quite difficult to draw and have to work a little bit harder. And it's worth saying at this point that I do believe that absolutely anybody can draw. Some people find it easier than others, some people have to work a little bit harder, but if you're given the right tools and the right encouragement, I think that anybody can draw. And then it's just a case of embracing whatever style you happen to draw in, and that might be really rough, it might be really refined. But the one thing that everybody has in common that I have worked with, the children that I worked with have the most incredible imaginations. Children's imaginations, on the whole, are far, far better than most adults. You only have to have been sat with a 7-year-old for 10 minutes discussing whatever you want to talk to them about, to see the kind of weird, funny, daft, stupid ideas that they come up with. There's not really a filter between what is going on in their head and what comes out of their mouth. That filter tends to come in much later. So as you grow up, as you become adults, you start to build these barriers and you start to put these filters into place. So you know you can say certain things, you can act in a certain way. Kids don't really care about that stuff. They just say whatever is on their mind. Now, as an artist, I do my best to just ignore these filters, which can, at times, I'll kind of admit, I can be quite embarrassing to be around, because I tend to just say whatever's on my mind. Kids do this without really trying. If kids are given an opportunity to be creative without being restricted, without being judged, without being graded, without being assessed, then they can come up with the most incredible ideas. At the same time, they can come up with really daft ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that. Daft ideas have merit too. So not too long ago, my own son presented me with a drawing. This drawing started off as you can see up there, it's a giant piece of poo sword fighting a dog. Obviously. And he was in hysterics when he gave me this drawing. He then took this drawing away and he started adding in loads of other ideas, loads of other bits and pieces. So there's a robot up there, there's a flying dinosaur, There's a hedgehog, all sorts of weird stuff going on. And through the entire process, he was wetting himself. He was just laughing at every new thing he added in. Because there is something genuinely quite incredible about just letting children express their thoughts without any sort of guidance, without any sort of hindrance, just letting them be creative. And he enjoyed the entire process of just sitting there adding to this weird cacophony of stuff that makes no real sense, but he enjoyed the process. Far too often that process is limited, that creative process. And like I say, as you get older, you tend to build these barriers and put in filters that all go towards kind of restricting this creativity. So one of the things I try and encourage when I work with kids is that they just express themselves. They just enjoy themselves drawing. Now, a lot of this sort of strive for perfection and strive to get things right comes from other aspects of education. In history, in science, in maths, it's all about the processes and the facts and the figures and the end result. And that's fine. That's how those subjects work. It's not how art should work. Art is something very, very different. Art should be about creativity and it should be about expression. There shouldn't be limits put on art. So any chance you get to encourage children to just take a piece of paper and a pencil and just be creative, take it and do it. If there's any chance you can take that paper away and let them work outside the bounds of the edges of the sheet of paper, even better. Get them to draw on walls, get them to draw on floors. Obviously not at home, don't use permanent markers, but if you can just let them create, they can come up with the most incredible ideas. One of the things that is, well, to be honest, the one thing that is said to me more than anything else at all of the sessions I teach, and this is from parents and teachers, not from the children, and that is, I wish I'd kept drawing when I was younger. There's probably a few people in here today who have either said that or thought that themselves. Normally, when this has been said to me, it's followed up just afterwards with an explanation as to why this particular individual stopped drawing. 9 times out of 10, this is because they couldn't do something, because they couldn't draw faces, they couldn't draw hands, they couldn't draw horses or dragons or whatever it might be. So they stopped. For me, that's a really terrible thing. They gave up on something that they loved doing because they couldn't get it perfect, they couldn't get it right. And then 10, 20, 30 years later, they wish they'd kept doing it. And putting that mindset onto kids is a horrible start for them being creative. You're already putting in place all of those walls and those barriers and those filters that eventually hide that creativity behind being an adult. So what I try and encourage, do my best to encourage in all of the sessions that I work in, is to just embrace mistakes. I honestly believe that the most important thing that you can teach children when they're learning to draw is that mistakes don't matter. They really, really don't. Mistakes are brilliant. Mistakes are wonderful things, especially as an artist. Mistakes are how we learn and how we develop as creative people. You make a mistake, you go back, you make changes, you address it, you approach it in different ways, you try different techniques, and you learn and you develop your skills. And eventually you improve. Now, I've been an illustrator for near enough 20 years. So the stuff that I am drawing now is better than the stuff that I drew 5 years ago. The stuff that I was drawing 5 years ago is better than the stuff I drew 5 years before that. And I'm fairly confident the stuff that I'm drawing in 5 years from now will be better than the stuff that I'm drawing right now. That's just how it works. You learn through experience and you learn through practice. And it's not just experience with drawing something or painting something, it's life experience. The more you see, the more you experience, the more you go through, the more you're able to put into your artwork. So when I come across kids who are upset that their artwork isn't as good as somebody who is 10 years older than them or 20 years older than them, it makes no sense. But this comparison is constantly made So anybody who has worked with children before will know that they don't always have the capacity to get everything that is going on in their head down on paper. And they certainly can't get things absolutely perfect how they want to picture them, particularly when it comes to writing. So a lot of the time, if you get a child to write a story and then get them to read it back to you, they will add bits and pieces in. They'll elaborate, they'll use different words, they'll use different sentence structures, they'll sometimes put in entire paragraphs of stuff that just hasn't been written down. This is clearly going on in their head, but it just hasn't managed to make it from their head to the paper. And this is where drawing can play a really important role. As long as the children are encouraged to draw without restrictions and without judgment and, like I say, without grading or assessment. When I was learning to draw when I was younger, there was quite a few people who I would class as sort of big influences on me as an artist. So there's the likes of Bill Watterson and Stan Sackey for cartoons. Greg Capullo from comic books all played a big role in me learning how to draw. The biggest influence of all was Quentin Blake. So as I was growing up, Quentin Blake's illustrations were hugely influential on me. And it's not because they're perfect. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Quentin Blake's illustrations are loose, they're free, they're quirky, they're strange, and they're riddled with what most children learning to draw would class as mistakes. You only have to look at the hands. The hands are always really crudely drawn. They're essentially 5 little pointy things sticking out the end of an arm. But if you think about it, 5 little pointy things sticking out the end of an arm, I mean, what is it going to be? It's obviously a hand. Getting it absolutely perfect doesn't matter. So the more we can get children out of thinking that their drawings and their artwork has to be perfect and has to be just right, the more we can help them develop as people. They need to accept that mistakes do happen, embrace their mistakes. And this then filters down into other aspects of their life. So their mental health, their confidence. If they know that they can make mistakes, and that's okay, because everybody does it, then this is going to help them grow as people, both academically and socially. So, in conclusion, mistakes are a wonderful thing. They are an important part of the creative process. Embrace them and enjoy them. Enjoy ideas, whatever they are, no matter how strange, how weird, or how mundane, they're all equally valid. And finally, encourage creativity at every opportunity, because you never know where it may lead. Thank you.